And we're rolling.
We're here.
We are. After lunch, and yeah, we've had a pretty active week, starting from like last week until
family
yesterday.
stuff.
Holy shit, man! Yesterday was a fucking bomb.
The weekend blew right through. A lot of stuff going on for us, anyway.
So, like the thing that's like first and foremost, everybody's talking about the death of Kobe, and it's very, very unfortunate. Kobe was a hell of a fucking basketball player.
Yeah, he's a good ball player for sure. You know, you can like him or not like him, but you can't deny the fact that guy was pretty damn good ball player.
Oh, he's forced to be reckoned with, and he was human. Okay, that's where I always struggle with most athletes is let me say, I mean, every time an athlete or celebrity passes away, everybody feels compelled to do memorials and tributes and yes,
we're not those guys, but we're humans and we understand how tragic this was, because not only was Kobe killed in this thing, there was a pilot, a female basketball coach.
There were Kobe's daughter.
His daughter was in there with him. Then there was a former U of H baseball player and coach out in California. His wife and one of his daughters were with him on that helicopter as well.
Right.
And so, so I know to the families that are left, this is nothing you can ever be ready for.
Our condolences. Number one.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, I mean, there's not much more you can say than they've already felt. I'm sure the NTSB will get to the root of it. There's a lot of speculation right now about the weather and things like that. So,
I mean, in the reporting, and hell, he even told me that there were agencies local to LA that had grounded their helicopters
sheriff's department
that day also.
Yeah, sheriff's department, fire department, traffic services, things like that. So,
right.
And I'm sure. Just a little bit about that helicopter. I mean, that thing is state of the art. I mean, it's not like Kobe was struggling to just get a helicopter to fly. He had state of the art. That was a B series, I think. Sikorsky.
Yeah.
That 76 is up to D now. I mean, it's there's only been like 900 of them built and sold in the world.
And this helicopter wasn't like a bottom of the barrel.
No, it was the ultimate executive track taxi.
Badass helicopter.
Yeah, and I'm sure the pilot was very competent as well. I mean, it's tough because everybody wants to come up with a reason why. I mean, sometimes it's just your day. I mean, they were flying in some pretty
sketchy conditions
for sure that were deteriorating. And everybody thinks of California as just being cars and buildings everywhere, but there's actually along that coastal area where they were. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of mountain ranges there. I lived there for 4 years, so I mean, I'm very familiar with how that terrain can change, especially by the coast.
Right.
It gets real foggy and low hanging, and it's just tragic that that's happened. I mean, we're going to be hearing about this probably now for days, weeks.
Yeah.
And
and I actually learned about this when I was at an event yesterday, and when I saw this thing pop across my feed, I was actually. I was like, man, is this fucking true?
Yeah.
And then it started just showing up everywhere.
Yeah.
First it was him, and then there were reports of his daughter, and then when you start, because I pay a lot of attention to all the different social media platforms,
right?
Everybody's weighing in, on one aspect or another about Kobe. They'll either weigh in on Kobe the athlete, or they'll weigh in on Kobe as the person that they remember from the sexual assault. And suddenly, like when we talked at lunch, is the people who dwell on that are, is it fair to say that they're people that believe that when a person goes down that road that they're not worthy of redemption?
Right, and that's a good point, because it does no good to drag a deceased person through the dirt.
Right.
I mean, they're dealing with those sins now. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, if you believe in that kind of stuff, that's what's going on. And so, I can tell you that I remember from the get-go, I mean, I was a huge basketball fan growing up, and like we were talking earlier, so when I was a kid in the 70s, I got out of high school in 79. So he was born in 78.
Right.
So he got to come up through the era of really good basketball moving forward.
Yeah, kind of iconic era. Yeah.
You had Bird, you had Magic Johnson, you had Jordan, you had all these guys coming up. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in his prime.
Dr. J.
Yeah, all these guys.
Wilt Chamberlain, all those guys.
And he did. I will say he was a game changer. He went right from high school to the NBA.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
And the thing that motivated him to do that was Kevin Garnett, because Kevin Garnett was like one of the first people to go straight from high school to pro.
Because I remember. So for me, basketball, the movie Hoosiers, probably encapsulated my experience and understanding of basketball as a kid. Growing up in Southwest Missouri, we basketball was our main thing. We didn't have a football team,
right?
And we didn't have baseball like you would have in organized areas. We had fast pitch softball, and we did play baseball, but not as a school team. And so we had to go play pony leagues and different leagues in our area.
Yeah, club teams.
Yeah, club teams. So basically, basketball was it. And so the whole town is based around that. I mean, if you ever want to see how I grew up, the movie Hoosiers is the best example of that.
Right.
I really got into the NCAA playoffs because you had. Well, that was when Magic Johnson was big. Him and Larry Bird.
Him and Bird.
Yeah, right. Bird, Michigan, and I think
UCLA.
Yeah, well, no, Bird played for Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah, Bird was at Indiana, and I'm thinking that Spartans was where. He played Michigan State. I think Magic played Michigan State.
Okay.
There was a guy by the name of I think it was Louis Kelcher that was with Magic Johnson, and they were like the Dunk brothers. These guys were like wicked. But back then, ball players, you had a few step out athletes that were extreme, what I call aerial artists, like those guys. But most of them were, we didn't have 3 points then either. And so you had.
Yeah, weren't they? They were still testing.
Yeah, still testing
Still trying to fit it into the league.
Game. But you had big immovable bodies on the inside. They weren't as athletic as they are now.
Yeah. Now
you got these 6'10", 6'11" that are guards. They're shooting guards. Back then,
way more athletic.
They were built more like Nebraska football players. They were just big, wide bodies, hard to move out of the zone. So you got a guy like Kobe that comes in the game, and he's a game changer. I'm not going to. You can't take anything away from the guy on the floor because he was such a fluid player. Oh, I mean, tell you, he was the player you loved to hate if he was playing your team.
And it's funny because his nickname, the Black Mamba, he gave himself that name.
Yeah, and
but I was like, it is so fitting because that dude was. I enjoyed the hell out of just watching him play. Just the way he moved, the way he shot, just his whole vibe of how he moved the ball down the court. Man, it was badass.
Well, it's interesting because I guess 2016 was his last year. I think he played. I think he scored 60 points in his last game, which was kind of cool.
He holds. The last time I checked, he holds second place for the highest number of points in a single game behind Wilt Chamberlain. Which, to my knowledge, that.
It's not going to be beat for a while.
That'll be.
Everybody have to sit on the bench.
Oh yeah.
Although LeBron tries to be that guy, and I just honestly
that's a story for another day.
I'm not a big LeBron fan, so but he's the one man team. But it's the thing with Colby is you go back and so this kid's parents, his dad was a ball player.
Yeah, Jelly Bean Bryant.
Yeah, so he grew up in Italy. I mean, this is a guy from wealth and privilege that made a lot of mistakes growing up.
Yeah.
You just know it happened. It's just the way it is. And I can't say that I wouldn't have made some of those mistakes. You know what I mean?
Everybody would have.
You're in the spotlight. You get millions of dollars. You have people pulling every direction. Women throwing themselves at you when you're young like that. You can kind of see where if you ask any coach or anybody that's been with players, they'll say that's the thing they got to fight the most is the temptation of the... Because they made real famous about NBA wives. Remember that?
Yes.
About the perils. But then again, you have women that are throwing themselves at these guys too. I mean, come on. A lot of them are trying to win the husband lottery that way.
Well, like anybody that's in a high profile event that draws a lot of spectators, yeah, exactly what you said is there's always going to be somebody looking for a trophy, something, whatever the sport or event is.
So it's got to be tough for them to find their true soulmate. It's got to be hard.
Oh yeah,
because you almost have to have that before you become famous. You know what I mean? And so his whole thing with the rape thing at the hotel and the infidelity with his wife and the makeup and redemption story, you have to give him credit for coming back from that.
Both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
To be able to put that kind of a, because nowadays, and hell, even 10 years ago, infidelity is something that is a huge thing to come back from.
It is. Good trust relationships for sure. So he came back, and so it's just like Tom Petty. You don't know the real person until they're gone and you start hearing stories about them. Because, Tom Petty, musician, I like his music. And then when he passed, I spent a lot of time learning about all the other great stuff the guy did.
Right.
And so with Kobe, so they were on their way to a basketball camp that they sponsored. One of his camps. And when you saw the amount of people that were assembled at this camp, and you start realizing that his part of giving back was that, and that's kind of good to see, because there's a lot of athletes, and I'm not taking anything away from anybody that doesn't do this, because not everybody is gifted with that ability to give.
Right. But
he took all the things and he started giving back, and I thought that was kind of cool. You're always going to hear when people pass, you're always going to hear people wax about all the greatness of that person.
Right.
Okay. And I get that. That's how it should be. I think he sets an example probably for some players that kind of struggle with that, because you hear a lot of players that get on drugs, gambling, infidelity, and they never come back from that. Well, this guy came back from all those adversities. Now, I will say, being as financially well off as he and his family and support system were, he had a lot of advantage. And I guarantee if he was here to tell you today, he would say, look, it wasn't me, it was all the people around me that helped me get through this. And I believe that.
And so there, without deep diving, because do we really know anything about Kobe? No, just whatever,
just what you see and hear in the media.
And, you might be able to glean a little bit of information. There are a lot of people that can take the freaking low road and just motherfuck this dude.
Oh, sure.
And they think that the sole content of Kobe's soul was the fact that he was somebody who was full of just deviant behavior.
Right.
And I like to think that there's some redeeming qualities to people.
Yeah.
Do they fall from grace from times? Absolutely they do. We all do. The whole thing about be the first one to cast the fucking stone if you have shut the fuck up.
It goes back to our story last week when we were talking about the Astros and the Stein stealing. Holy crap. I mean, it's funny how everybody's self-righteous about shit.
Oh, yeah.
They all act like, I've never cheated on this, I've never done that, I've never done this, so I'm going to be judgmental of everybody. When in fact, I don't care who you are. Circumstance is going to come up where you have regrets about an action you made. Whether no matter what level it is, whether severe or not severe or inconsequential, you're going to make a mistake, and you're going to follow the crowd.
And the thing
on
is
these things.
Like, to your point, if nobody knows that you've done something, that doesn't make you innocent. It just means people don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not looking at themselves. Like I've always said, when you're pointing your finger at somebody, you've got at least three fingers pointing back at you. So let's So, like I said, condolences to all the families involved. What's going to happen now, though, is we're going to have this onslaught.
It's already
media jumping on it, and that's kind of what we want to talk a little bit about. Is the fact that
the tributes that are already showing up in the professional sports.
Yeah,
in the Grammys last night. Anything that's going on now.
Facebook and Twitter, people that don't even know him are posting these memorials now. With
the NBA games, I get it because he was connected to that sport.
Yeah,
and all the players there, they at some point had some brush of interaction with Kobe in some capacity, whether it was a player, an event, something like that,
or wanted to be like him.
Oh yeah. Because the guy had fucking skills.
Oh yeah, he's mad skills.
So with his passing, you've got a lot of people that, they showed they had camera shots of a lot of players that he had playing experience with, like Lamar Odom and I forget who, there was somebody else that they showed that was really significant, where it was like watching somebody who just learned that a family member passed, a close family member, and so that's fucking real.
Well, you had Team USA.
Yes,
you had the Olympics, then you got, and I don't know how many years he played, 10, 12, 15, how many years?
20
years. So he's played 20 years in the NBA.
He was drafted in 96.
That's true. Okay, so you have all these years. So yeah, you're going to cross paths with a lot of people. And when you're that level of an athlete, you're going to have interactions at functions. You're going to be parts of a lot of things around you just because of that celebrity
over the course
status,
of 20-year player history. Fuck yes.
I think, and I try not to be jaded about, how do I say this? So I call it the emotional support crutch of compassion. Okay. It doesn't probably mean anything, but you get a lot of people that see the news and they feel compelled to reach out on Twitter and Facebook. And, we all act as if we know these celebrities sometimes because of, you know what I mean? Because of social media. So we were talking earlier about, what would have happened in 79 or 80 if this happened? And so we were talking about the outlets. So you would hear it on the evening news. They would interrupt whatever show was going on.
And I missed that because I immediately went to, from your immediate reach for the time period. Yes, it would absolutely would have been evening news would have been the first to report it.
Right.
Then followed by newspapers the next morning. Right. Plus, magazines.
So Sports Illustrated would have been the one that would have, because that comes out weekly.
Yes.
So you would have had a lot of coverage of that there. You probably would have had moments of silence at ball games, okay? Because I think that's just respectful. I think it's very respectful to do that. So, so you have that. But what we have now, so we have media access 24/7, 365.
And to something that we brought up earlier, it was about the whole 24-hour news cycle. Really, it's not just news.
No.
It's social media.
Yeah.
Yes, it's everything.
Yeah. And so, and the problem is, it's not really the problem, but I guess it's the byproduct of social media. Everybody wants to get their word in.
Well, I will say we're getting our word in now.
Well, of course, because that's what podcasts are. Yeah, and it's funny. That's a good point because it's funny to hear what are perceived to be legitimate radio personalities talk about podcasts. They go, well, they're just trying to be like us. We have radio shows, and they don't. They have their own platform. Well,
they really are just like us.
They're not. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have engineers, and they have all. This is all stuff we do. Right. This is us sitting down, sharing our thoughts with people that might happen to be interested in what we're talking about.
After we're done here, we got to go mow the grass.
Yeah, and all other stuff like that. So it's it's. I'm always taking apart the whole social media thing because, so I follow Twitter and Instagram a lot like you do.
Right.
I'm more of a voyeur on that. I don't really interact. I watch. I gather stuff from there. I'm a big collector of information.
And I will say in the capacity of this story, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not engaging in any conversation with anybody because as far as I'm concerned, the only people that really should be engaged in something like this would be the immediate family
and the ones that support
anybody.
them.
Outside of that, fuck off. Nobody needs to weigh in anything about his death.
Right. So when you look at the massive media coverage, it comes in all forms. So the Grammys did this.
Yes.
The football did this. NBA did it. Social media did it.
The hand signs.
All this stuff that you see everybody doing. So I understand. A lot of people may argue, well, they're just showing their respect. I understand that, but there's also a side that if you don't do it, you'll get criticized for not doing it. That's the problem, and so everybody feels compelled to comply now with an action. You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
You know?
And so I don't know if you saw this or not. So in the veteran community, I saw this yesterday, is I'm not going to say anybody's names here, but there was some comments that were thrown out about, okay, so when the community found out about Kobe, there were people that chimed in that wanted to say, okay, well, what about the service members or the soldiers' deaths when helicopters go down then? And I'm like, ugh. Okay, and then
they posted a crash that happened in Fallujah, like 10 years ago.
But they were actually posting several different incidents.
Yeah.
So the fact that, okay, so when somebody posted something, I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think it was thrown out there to ruffle anybody's feathers. Yeah. It was, it may have been thrown out to like, hey, let's not lose the attention of the guys who
are really heroes,
who are out doing stuff like this. I don't think it was like a dick measuring contest.
No.
But there were some people that tried to read into the original posters to say that this is what your intent was. And I'm like, unless you're that person, shut the fuck up.
And this kind of ties into everything we're trying to say here. Sometimes we don't say it probably in the best way or in the right order, but you're absolutely correct. The problem with social media is everybody feels like they're your hall monitor. Or your school teacher, and they want to grade your paper. Hey, it's an opinion. It's my thoughts at the moment. They may change. I typically don't post immediately to something. If I'm going to post to something, I'm going to kind of look at it and think it through, and I may not even comment because who gives a shit about what I think?
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
Who cares?
Some people have a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
Some people have a very weighted opinion, like you, as I'm going to gather all the facts before. If I feel like saying something, I'll say it. But how I look at it is whether you say it now or say it later, if you feel like you want to say something, you're entitled to a shitty fucking opinion.
Right.
Okay? So if you want to voice it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But it's all perception to everybody out there. They'll either think you're fucked up or they'll go, okay, I kind of see his skew on this.
Yeah, the conversations that used to be amongst people are now on communications. They're all on they're all on the wire. You know what I mean?
How you do things. Yeah. Now. I'm like, oh my God, you're now going to start telling people what my intent was.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you know? Unless you're part of my brain or my thought process, or I'm in a group of people where we collectively come to a decision on something, don't fucking tell me what my goddamn intent was.
Yeah.
I only reserve the right to do that.
There you go. Well, I can see where there are key people that have had contact with this dude that would be, well, let's just take like LeBron, for example. I mean, he just passed his record.
Right.
A scoring record. I understand they shared a Twitter just before that.
Yes.
That flight. So, you expect to hear that. But the one thing that I really struggle with, and maybe I'm just not familiar with the culture, I don't know, but
the basketball culture?
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'm just not familiar with the basketball culture, but there are so many iconic players out there that were trendsetters, okay?
Yeah.
And
so this actually speaks to sort of the humbleness of a player.
Yeah, okay. I think so. And I think that, again, I think it's very worthy. I mean, he's just showing respect to a guy's record he's been chasing and surpassed. Then you get into the Grammys where you had artists that were, making their point. And this is herein lies my struggle with it. Because it's a soundbite on. I'm always suspect of the media because I never really trust the media's intentions on anything. I don't feel that they're not a worthy or credible source of information anymore.
Plus, everybody can be influenced.
Yes, and I think that's the word, is the influencers. When you start looking at the media and the news isn't reporting information anymore.
Right.
The news is carrying an emotional content now. I mean, they basically are using the media, I think, I look at it as an activism tool. I look at it as is we want to promote these feelings, this agenda, these ideals, whatever it is, and we want everybody of what would be called an influencer to weigh in on it. So let's go find out what LeBron says. Let's go find out what Jay-Z and Beyonce say. I mean, that's where I start turning it off because, okay, the incident happened. People are mourning. The investigation's coming. Okay, I'm going to wait now for the results. I really don't want to hear a bunch of people wax lyrical about that. I'm weird about that at real life funerals.
So I will say, like, just from hearing you talk, is really I've basically taken news reporting and news reporting agency and basically have removed the news reporting title and basically just said this is just another form of social media.
Yeah, that's all they are.
You're not reporting. You're presenting it in maybe a social media type format, which really starts making it not look like news reporting anymore.
Right.
Is you're just your social media on terrestrial airwaves. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Or at least, one of many airway or streaming services that are out.
Yeah, and going back to the deaths of soldiers, because we had people that were killed right yesterday.
Yes.
And the day before. And I think everybody's weighing in for their piece or their pound of flesh on these things. And I think that's a shame. I think there's room for everybody's on social media. There's room for everybody's thought and feelings, on these things. So but when people start turning on each other, that's when I kind of look at it like. And I say that, and people that know me know that we inadvertently pick on people.
Yes, and it can turn downright fucking cannibalistic.
Yeah, it can get really ugly really quick. And so you try to measure that. You try to know your audience. I don't know, but going back to the news. I mean, it's hard to even call it that because. Let's just jump on this whole thing about the Bolton.
The Bolton report.
The Bolton report, and
actually, it's a book excerpt from his book, right?
So we have a known group of villains that are not happy with the way things went their way. So what they've done is they started manipulating a lot of facts.
So the villains we're talking about are like Nadler, Schiff,
all
Pelosi,
those people that have let it known from the beginning that they didn't like what was going on.
Sure.
And I'm only going to use this for an example. I'm not promoting any side on this.
Right.
But the problem you have is with the truth. So what ends up happening is the New York Times runs an article saying that that Bolden had alluded to the fact that Bolden had construed the fact that Trump was withholding funds for to punish or to investigate Democrats. Okay,
it's a push.
It's a push, but it never. Bolden never said that.
Right,
and Trump even said, "Hey, he never said that." So what ends up happening is you have a news organization that didn't make a mistake, is a very well placed, planned drop.
It's a Pandora's box.
Yeah, exactly. So what they do typically, when you look at the cycle, they'll report a story with no verification. Okay, and this is all by design. This isn't a mistake. This isn't
what they consider their level of adequate verification.
Well, it's enough to act on.
Correct.
So you have that
actionable.
Yeah, it's actionable. So what they do is they report it as a bombshell or breaking news, right? So they get your attention right away. Oh, I've been waiting to hear this. So they're appealing to the people that are either dislike or are indifferent. Okay, so they present these stories. The story is going to make a 24-hour news cycle like nobody's business. So it's going to fester. It's going to build up momentum. Okay, The other side does the homework and says, "Wait a minute, this was not in the book. This was not said," and they come out and they refute it. So what ends up happening is the news source, the credible news source, is going to blame their source. Oh well, okay. Well, we did. That's what we were told. Knowing that they should have verified it before they put it out there.
But the damage is already done.
So now we're into the second 24-hour cycle of news. So now 48 hours, this has been getting play on breaking news headlines around the clock, around the world for 48 hours. So to them, it's mission accomplished. So what ends up happening? The story goes away. Okay,
but you still have people repeating the wrong story.
Exactly. So it's out there, and it's just a tumbling boulder of damage going through the media. So you have that. And they can even recant that story. They can even say, "Oh, well, you know what? You're right."
But the recant would be seen as a defensive move.
Yeah, and it'll never see the light of 10 hours, maybe, if even that. It'll just make a blip, and then you got to search for it. So that's I look at the mentality of behind all the media push, because we were talking about just how damaging that can be without any substance. But you were going to say something with
the whole breaking news thing.
Yeah,
is how I look at it. Is okay. This Bolton excerpt, I think it was kind of labeled as sort of a bombshell. So they did they interrupt like news?
No, it just started running across the bottom. So what they use is that bottom margin.
Yeah. The ticker. Streaming
the streaming ticker. And so they count on social media to fire it up. And what happens is people then start to share this.
Yes.
So it goes viral, so to speak, and it hits Twitter. Twitter and Facebook are probably the biggest ones you're going to see. Instagram's not built for that kind of shit. But so you have Twitter and Facebook. And what ends up happening is the masses pick it up and run with it. And we see it all the time. How many times does everybody... You and I spend a ton of time fact-checking.
Oh, yeah.
And we also spend a lot of time fishing. So we'll throw something out there. I'm giving away some of the shit that we do personally. But so we throw stuff out there just to see how people are going to respond to it.
Now, the one thing I will say, kind of caveat with the fact-checking is fact-checking in a way that I guess makes sense to us. It may not be the best way of fact-checking because you don't have access to all the information, because right now we're in a capacity where we don't have access to a lot of information. That's why my big deal is trying to explain what is. I'm like, now is to me, it's based on the information I was able to extract from the sources I know to go to,
right?
And it makes sense to me. I could have it all fucked up, but I still went to a level where I wanted to make sure that I'm not running around spouting a bunch of bullshit.
Well, I look for the actual quote. I look for anything that says that this is what the guy actually said.
Right.
And that's kind of your best first shot at it. A lot of times I like to just throw stuff out there just because I know particular people that will respond, and I kind of have a feeling on how they're going to respond to it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for that response.
This is putting the burr under the saddle.
Yeah.
Let's wait till they start noticing the burr under the saddle.
Right. That's kind of where I'm at. And so, you look at these stories, and we're doing the same thing the media does. I'm measuring the response.
We just don't have the reach the media does.
Our reach is very small compared to the global stage that they do this in. So it's kind of fun to watch stories evolve. And the part I like is, so if you know me, you kind of know my level of attention to detail.
Right.
And I like the ones that go, aha, I got you. And I'm like, no, actually, I got you, because I'm looking for the usual or the obvious suspect to reply. You know where I'm going?
Sure.
And so the news does the same thing. I mean, you gotta realize
knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, you're looking for the knee-jerk reaction, and you're looking for the person that's willing to commit the most emotional.
That's yeah.
You're looking for the emotional response.
Sometimes that's my entertainment is getting the emotional response that I knew that I would get.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about once people realize that about you, it changes the way they engage you. Yeah, it really does.
You
because
really find out that I am fucking devious motherfucker, man.
Right, you can be. So it makes people. I don't know if it's a disservice to us or if it changes the way people view us, because they kind of question like, well, what did you mean by that? So I don't know. It's just us being stupid. We're just having fun. But the way the news shapes things is what really concerns me. Right now, it's just wide open warfare on everything. You can talk about food. You can talk about cars. You can talk about movies. You can talk about anything: sports, politics, religion. It runs amok, but you kind of got to have a pretty solid constitution about yourself.
Yes,
about your self-assurance and what your beliefs are. If you're malleable, man, I feel bad for you because you're going to be twisted. You're going to be like that bobber on the ocean, man. You're going to get slapped around. You're going to get beat up.
I am looking for you.
Yeah, those are the ones, and it's unfortunate. And hopefully that they get woke. I like using Ricky Gervais really hit chord with woke because when you look up that definition, it really is true. A lot of people where they make a commitment to a cause. And it's a very ill-advised commitment to the cause without being fully aware of what's really going on behind the scenes. And we live in that world. I mean, we were just talking about what is her name, Deborah?
Deborah Dugan.
Deborah Dugan.
This whole Grammy thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
She gets shot out of a cannon on this thing because she basically, when she took over, a year or two ago. Is it even been that long? I
want to say she's probably been in that position for probably right at a year, maybe a little bit more.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. And so the controversy comes out of that on how corrupt the management was before, or I wouldn't say maybe corrupt, but maybe influenced.
Yeah, well. Because winners would be influenced by, I think they said committee members from different regions, and so really, the winner, whoever the winner ends up being on television, makes you really kind of call into question who would have been the winner,
the real winner,
had the influence not happened,
right?
But in my mind, every award show from the Grammys all the way to whatever show, the Emmys, the Golden Globes, in my opinion, it calls all of those shows into question.
Sure. I like that this is coming out because to me, I relate it back to the whole Manafort baseball thing with the sign stealing. So you get a guy that I personally don't believe has any baseball knowledge. He's just a troublemaker. He's a weak dude that people are running down, so he goes out and he splatters the reputation of a part of a game that's been a part of the game for a long, long time.
Right.
So I look at her and I'm asking myself, okay, is this one of those instances? And then out of the blue comes Sean Combs, P. Diddy to most people. Yes. And he gives a speech in an after party.
Yeah, it's a related party to the Grammys.
Yeah.
But it's I forget who the entertainer was that they named this event after.
But he got an award. He was awarded something because
it's like for
an acknowledgement.
For his years of service, doing this kind of stuff.
And so he laid down some. I didn't agree with 100% of it, but I did agree with the moment that it was presented in, and how he did it. Because we're always going to argue about the minutia and the finite details.
Yes,
but the flow of what he was saying was very legitimate, and I'm not a fan of hip hop, but I will say that it means something to somebody.
Yes,
and
there is a buying public.
There is a buying public for it, and his argument about it not being fairly treated equally, like they claim in their charter, comes into play, and it also rolls back into the Deborah Dugan. Bringing the same thing out.
I will assign that same thing that he described.
Yeah.
Even with our current politicians.
Oh yeah.
Really, in my mind, in a nutshell, do these people that sit in positions of power, whether it's in the government or an industry that gives out awards and stuff, are they representative of the buying public? If the buying public is a factor in an award, do they fairly represent it?
Sure.
As far as I'm concerned, fuck no, they don't.
Well, when you're a kid, you're right. I agree with you. So when you're a kid in high school and you're trying to get a scholarship, say you're an athlete or an intellect, okay, you go to competitions to win awards to build your resume, to impress upon a school. Look at me, I've done this, I've won this.
Right.
I'm in this group of elitism, whatever it is. I'm in a top of my class in this on the intellectual and sports side. So that generates...
and the peers for that group say I am.
Yes, exactly. And it generates... So for them, it generates money for scholarships. Well, when you get into the business world or even the world of media and academia, having all these letters attached to your stapled to your resume means a lot. Right. So when you start looking at how do we influence this, you start manipulating and massaging these organizations that will accredit. You see where we're going with
something?
this?
Well, something just occurred to me just by that line of line of thought you're laying out is by that acknowledgement there, it even calls into question now Pulitzer and Nobel Prize winners.
For sure.
Hey, those things don't carry the weight that they used to.
No, they don't, because so everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon.
Or the Peabody Award for writers.
Right.
For authors, whatever.
See, that's a very good one. So let's go back to Nobel. I'm going to say that when Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, I'm like, for what?
I'm sure everybody had that for what?
Yeah, for what? What did he do? Okay, is it because he was the first black president? Okay, great. But when you hear people argue, people will break the argument saying, well, he's half white, half black. He's not really black. He's not this. He's not that. You get into this whole controversy of it's not the body of work that he's done. It becomes about the person and his position in the media spotlight.
Well, and so in this day and age, what I've noticed in some of the events that I've viewed, whether it's online or read about, is we're in an age of firsts.
Yes.
There always has to be a first of this or that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to narrow it down to, a certain demographic. There's somebody's always looking to break a record somewhere.
Sure. Or the glass floor.
Yes, because so it doesn't reflect a long past era. Now we need to, which I understand what they're doing, but okay, now to me it's kind of like lowering the requirements just so you can assume a record.
Well, let's camp there for a little bit, because I how do I want to say this? Okay, so let's just use perception of racism as a topic.
Okay.
And let's not be specific about the race, okay? Because it's all over the place. It could be any color, anything. So when people start drawing lines and throwing stones, you're perpetuating the racism, okay?
Okay.
If you go on the merits of the work, okay, if you were able to blindfold everybody and just judge by the merits of the work and the good that the work does, that should lead you into what you reward and award. It shouldn't matter where it came from, as long as it was of significant benefit to the betterment of man. So it should count.
We did have this conversation before we started. Okay, from what at least how I'm processing what you just said is like when somebody has a problem with, okay, let's just use racism as, so like with what P. Diddy did, or what Sean Love calls himself, Sean Love Combs now.
Right.
So, but when he gives his opinion on his perception of what he thinks is going on in the industry, number one is the advantage that he has over me is he's in an industry that he is in 100%.
And he helped develop a lot of it.
Day.
Yeah,
yes.
He helped develop a lot of it.
So it's really hard for me, not being in the industry that he is, to say, oh, you know what? That dude's full of shit.
Yeah.
As I'm not, and plus at some point when he's conveying an opinion about something, are you allowed to be personal about that opinion? Absolutely you are.
Yeah.
If you think that the industry in some way has slighted you in a way, absolutely you can say fuck you.
Yeah.
You have basically not given the accolades to a certain genre that is just as credible as, okay, I'll just say country and western music.
Sure.
Okay. Because as far as I'm concerned, those really are the two genres that sort of compete for the greatest amount of audience. Like I love classic rock and blues and stuff. It doesn't open a whole lot of fucking cash registers, but hip hop shows up in advertising. It shows
movies,
up in
everything.
movies.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets people fucking buying the music, the clothing, whatever it is that they see their favorite artists doing. They want to have that. And hey, kudos for you for being able to market that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, you know,
no, you're right. I think, like I said, so I'll bare my soul here just a little bit. So when I first heard his speech,
do.
Yeah, I know. When I first heard his speech, and he was going on, say it was a 20-minute speech. I listened to 10 minutes of it, and the minute he hit a certain subject matter, it turned me off.
Yes. And I was going to say something when you walked out of the room and then you came back.
So I got up and left.
Yes.
But I went downstairs and I reflected on that for just a minute, and I go, you know what? That's not really fair. There's 20 minutes here. Let me hear him
in entirety,
and let me hear him wrap it up.
Right.
And I'm glad I did, because when I came back, I listened to it in its entirety. I was like, okay, I get it. I understand where he's going.
Right.
I don't know why he had to go where he went on a particular subject matter, but that's okay.
Because I will agree with you that there were ways that he said it where it made it hard to understand when he said culture, my culture, black culture. I was like, are we talking about, because at some point when you started this whole thing, you addressed it as the entire musical family.
Yeah.
And then
he broke it up.
Then you broke it up, which I understand. So at some point when he's breaking it up, part of it becomes personal, which I understand. Yeah. Hey, if you don't think that you've gotten the kind of the proper acknowledgement that, you know, when awards are being handed out, I don't know what metrics they're using to say, oh, you know what, whatever it is, your work was greater than this one. I have no idea what they use.
Don't you think he threw that in there as the obligatory race card? Because honestly, from the deepest part of my beliefs,
it could be,
is that,
is he entitled?
I don't know if he is or not, though, because here's the thing. You can't preach on the basis of equality for a genre.
Right.
And then pigeonhole your argument on a race or a culture.
Well, that's why I kept saying his speech seesawed from being I'm for you.
So was he doing that for effect, or was, because honestly, when you throw those words out there, you're going to coerce people into oh, you're right, we shouldn't have done that because of this.
Right.
I disagree. You shouldn't have done it because it's art and it's hard work and it has merit. It shouldn't have anything to do with the culture or the color of the people involved in it.
Now, the part where he comes up and says, you've got executives who are not the artists that are basically dictating your success or failure. In that respect, he is right. People who have no clue into what puts the artistry together should not have anything to do with whether.
But they're the ones with the money, though. That's the thing that people tend to forget. So you get a lot of artists that grind it out from the ground, man, and they do their own development. I mean, we saw this with Prince, where Prince was like, screw this, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Yes.
But they held him under contract, so he's the artist formerly known as Prince.
So he would do fuck you artist.
Exactly.
Fuck you art.
Yeah, exactly. So once you get out of contract, so here's what ends up happening: is you're a young artist and you hit a vein of popularity, then you get managers and handlers that are advising you. Some of it's good advice, some of it is not good advice because you're being led down this road of management, right?
Depends on what and really, like you said, with the management.
Yeah.
What is their goals? They might not be the same as what you want.
Yeah. So is it about the art, or is it about the fame and fortune that the art brings you? Okay. So I look at it that way more, because you and I know from singer-songwriters that we follow and we respect, they're paupers and they die paupers, and they don't really get famous until they're dead, until somebody that's on somebody's radar picks it up and revives that music.
Right.
And so, you look at that, and like I said, I listened to his speech. I would encourage you to, anybody listening that wants to know what we're talking about, YouTube the Sean Combs 2020 Grammy speech that he gave, so that you kind of understand the context of which we're talking.
Yeah, so it's less than 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's not long. And so you look at it, and you start going, okay, I get that, but then I don't like this, but I get that. So it's a constant redemption, fall off the wagon. But my point is, you're not going to move forward until you start leaving some of that language out. And here's the problem. They don't want you to leave that language out, because that makes news. So when you throw that out there, it gets traction. And that goes back to my point about Twitter and Facebook, and to that effect, Instagram now would come into play because you can put little videos on Instagram now that can say whatever you want. And so what ends up happening is the soundbite is floating around in a verse. Okay, it's all over the place.
Sure.
And now you're starting to get judged by your hits and likes.
Which really has become, that's the goal is to get your likes up, which before we started, I mean, when we were looking at our own page, and I normally don't ever react to that when I see that we've lost a supporter.
It costs you something.
I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like, I worked really hard to do this, or we worked really hard to do this, and all of the content that we try to put out, and not only with the stuff that we talk about, but the sometimes the evergreen stuff that which we don't probably put out enough of, but we try to connect with whatever's relevant right now.
Right.
But anytime you slip back a little bit, you're entitled to be a little dejected.
Sure. No, and that's in case my point is that what ends up happening is you get accountants now. Going back to the executives in this conversations, they're the guys with the money.
Yes.
So you as a struggling artist are trying to get the guy with the money to give you the money. And then the struggle begins on the content. You always see the artistic values being massaged and manipulated by marketing guys that say, well, this will give us our best return on our investment.
That's where I struggle.
Yeah, and since we own the money that you've gotten to make this, you're going to do it this way.
Right.
Because how many artists have fallen off the radar for giving them the big finger and saying, screw you, we're not doing this? Well,
the perfect example would be like Dr. Dre when he had two horrible misses.
Yeah.
He was definitely one of these guys that was trying to figure out where to, this world has changed. I got to figure out where I can jump back in.
Right.
And that when I want to say that when Eminem came bubbling to the surface, that they were vehicles for each other.
Right.
So that's why I kind of like that. You've got to be resourceful. You've got to figure out your relevance.
And the same thing happens with news reporters. Same thing happens with politicians. CEOs are a little different because they build themselves these nice little golden parachutes that are all at the expense of the employee.
Sure.
I really struggle with that because it used to be the CEOs were like guys like Lee Iacocca and all these guys that were build companies from shambles. Now you really don't have that anymore. You don't really have anybody coming up and actually changing an industry. Now you've got people managing margins.
About the only person I can think of that probably holds sort of the same close iconery that Iacocca did would be like Steve Jobs.
That was where I was going to go. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs are definitely game changers. Yes. When you start looking, everything now has become a money market thing. Because of all the consolidation, you don't have small companies coming up like this anymore. Plus, because they can't afford it.
And the CEOs now have become like part of the conversation, like Zuckerberg and that joker with Twitter. I forget what the fuck his name is. But everybody out there is now part of the conversation instead of being, yes, people knew who Bill Gates was and they knew who Steve Jobs was, but they knew him in a business capacity, not, hey, let's get inside the mind of these guys. Well, you get inside the mind of these guys when they put a book out, not on Twitter.
Well, and they're both completely different icons because Jobs actually built shit.
Yes.
And Gates just figured out how to tie it all up in contracts.
I'd say both of them were good cultivators.
They were cultivators for sure, but Jobs really did have, I thought, more of an artistic edge to him than Gates did. Because Gates is like a cold turkey. I mean, you just look at him. But what we see now, though, is when you start looking at politicians, for example. What I like about what I'm seeing right now in the political cycle is the exposure of the true career politician for what they are. I absolutely love the fact that we are starting to get to see just how corrupt they are with their power and how they garner things for their favor at the expense of the tax-paying country. Because we have so many things going on right now that we believe we're hemorrhaging money, but we are. But while we're hemorrhaging money, you got about a dozen of these elitists that I know of that are just siphoning the well for everything they can get out of it. And when they get exposed, you start seeing them turn extremely ugly, and they run to their ally, the media.
Yes.
They run right back to where we started in this conversation about how the media is now used as an activism tool. And you can pick your cause, the green movement, this movement, that movement, the nationalists, whatever it is. All you got to do is run to the media, because you know that there's millions of viewers involved in these events that cause a lot of chaos for people. So the truth is going to be what you believe it to be, and they're going to mask it. It's up to you to dig it up.
Just do that. Just do your homework.
I would think that's where we would leave this, you know, because at the end of the day, you have to trust what you see, what you can find,
and then verify.
All
right, guys. Well, it was a nice show, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.